We cannot talk about relationships without talking about trust. I recently came up with this idea of big T trust and little t trust. And the reason why I came up with these terms is because there is an entire spectrum of trust, and it matters what level of trust we're talking about. I don't know if I can trust you to be honest with me is different than I don't know if I can trust you to wash your dishes after you use them. That probably sounds pretty obvious when I say it like that. But I often hear clients talk about trust in a global way, which can create confusion in your communication. I'll give you an example. I was once working with a client and he was bringing his complaints about his partner. And I often like to let clients go on a bit here so that I can observe how they're talking about their partner and the stories they're making up about their partner? Does it seem like they're always blaming their partner or always blaming themselves? Do they get caught in mental loops where they're losing presence as they're talking? What's my intuition telling me as they're speaking? Stuff like that. But, anyways, this client in the same breath told me that his partner had recently taken his phone and threw it across the room, punched him in the shoulder, and also had a habit of leaving extra time on the microwave. You know, like when you are cooking something and you take it out before it beeps. And these two behaviors couldn't be more different. One is a serious breach of physical and probably emotional safety. And the second doesn't matter at all. So we have to be able to talk about both of these things honestly. And what was interesting is that he was minimizing the abusive behaviors in a way, making excuses for his partner, like, yeah, she gets pretty reactive. She's like that, while magnifying and projecting a story that probably isn't true onto the annoyance, saying something to the effect of, yeah, she doesn't respect me. I've asked her to not do that with the microwave and she still does it. Now, I can't be sure if his wife is intentionally leaving time on the microwave just to annoy him and bug him. But I'd prefer to give her the benefit of the doubt that she's not conspiring against him in all these little ways, and to let him know that that's something that he probably needs to let go of. If you've ever lived with someone, you know that they don't always do things the way you want them done. And even if you're right, that there's a better way to do things, and that's your way, there is value in building patience around some of these little things because that's life and it's going to work better for you and your partner. Now, coming back to the hitting and throwing the phone thing, I wanted to let him know that that is not okay ever. Don't make excuses for that behavior. There needs to be a clear agreement and clear boundaries around stuff like that for many different reasons. No matter how disconnected you feel from each other, you should never hit each other or throw things across the room. If you have children, they're watching you. They're learning how to behave from you. A very simple baseline for the home is that there is no violence. And I get that for a lot of people, violence was normalized in their childhood. But we've come a long way in the last 30, 40, 50 years. We understand the psychological effects that violence has on our nervous systems, our psyche, our emotional safety. And there is an irony that people that grew up in abusive households often have a higher tolerance for that, especially if it's less than they experienced in their home. But that doesn't make it okay. Having a high tolerance for abuse is not a good thing. You can take the nugget there that you're resilient and you found ways to adapt to your environment, but that doesn't mean that you repeat the cycle in your own home, whether you're dishing it out or putting up with it or both. And a simple thought experiment that I would give you is to think about if your interaction with your partner was recorded, how would you feel about everybody you know watching it? I call this the behind closed doors experiment. Now, if you would feel embarrassed, ashamed, nervous, that's your gut telling you that there's something off about that. And interestingly enough, a lot of people do have cameras in their house now. And maybe that's a topic that I will talk about at a later time because I'm more or less agnostic on having cameras in the house. Jenny and I do not, but we will occasionally record our conversations when there's conflict so that we can go back and listen to it if we want, if something was said where we have different memories and to add a layer of accountability there. I know that might bring up strong feelings with some people, but my theory on it is that if I don't really have anything to hide, who cares? And yeah, sure, if Jenny posted one of these conversations online or other people were listening to it, I would probably feel a bit embarrassed because I'm not always as resourced as I am now, but I'd be all right facing those feelings. That's me. That's how I feel and act sometimes. And even in our hardest moments, Jenny and I are still respectful of each other. So maybe that's a podcast for another day. So let's dive a little bit deeper into this topic of trust. I'm Bryce Bauer, and this is the Relationships Made Simple for Men podcast. I work with couples and individuals. I run a men's group, host men's retreats. I've worked for therapeutic and addiction treatment centers. This is basically all I've been doing my whole adult life. And I'm glad that you're here listening to what I have to say because I care a lot about people. I care a lot about relationships. And I believe relational development is the thing that will change the world for the better. So I'm excited to talk about big T and little T trust. I do draw a lot of my ideas from smart people and pioneers in this field, but this is something that I came up with on my own. I haven't heard it before. So I guess I'm a little proud to coin these terms. I think it will make sense to you. So when we're talking about big T trust, what I'm referring to is emotional and physical security, the two base layers on the hierarchy of relationship needs that I developed. With physical safety, the question is, will my body be okay? Will it be protected from the elements? Will I have a home? Will I have food and water to survive? And will my body be protected from injury? With emotional safety, the question that we're asking is, do I feel safe to be myself around you? Are my feelings welcome, positive and negative? With little T trust, what we're talking about is our preferences. That could be being on time, spending money, which I realize can be a gray area. I'll talk about that. Cleanliness, roles, chores, where we live, how we spend our time, hobbies, shared interests, etc. Now, what's interesting about these types of trust is that if we're looking at the arc of a long-term relationship, in the beginning, we don't have a lot of information to go off of as far as big T trust is considered. As we're spending time getting to know each other, we're looking for shared interests, shared ways of thinking about the world, activities we can do together. Do I like being around this person or not? Am I attracted to them? And are they attracted to me? And that's all good. It has to go that way. And we won't really know if we're going to be able to trust them in a big way until we start to experiment with sharing more important things like a home, like finances, like having children. And of course, the big one, how do they handle their feelings? How do they handle conflict? And usually some of this will come up in the first 6 months to 2 years of a relationship, which is often called the honeymoon phase. We're both showing the best sides of ourselves. We can kind of pick and choose when and how we interact, but at some point the rubber is going to hit the road. There's a big difference between, do I like hanging out with this person, and can I trust this person with my life for the next 50, 60 years. It really is our whole being that we're hoping we can trust them with. And it's scary. Our nervous system is finely tuned to look for clues and reasons for why maybe we shouldn't trust them. Lucky us, right? Our nervous system knows that it would be better for us to pull away and disconnect before something really bad happens than to go along and have something really painful happen or continue to happen and being stuck with that. And this is something that I've had to take into account more and more in Jenny and I's relationship. I have to get curious anytime my mind or body says, I don't know if I can trust you. Is that real? Is there objective evidence? Or is my brain and body just doing what it's supposed to do by pinging and checking in and being vigilant? And this can be tricky if you don't have frameworks and skills to work with it and information, because we all have our strategies to deal with that. Checking. If you have an attachment style similar to mine, then whenever you're not quite sure if you're going to be held or understood, you pull back. You want to get away, go do your own thing. And that works for me because It helps me feel like I'm in control. Control equals safety. But the downside of that strategy is that my partner will feel distance between us. They'll feel less safe with me the more I pull back. And eventually they'll get tired or lonely or whatever, and they'll pull back too. This happened a lot in my past relationships. And then eventually, when I felt safe enough, resourced enough again to come back, I'd want to come back and I'd want everything to be okay again. But it wasn't. They're trying to figure out how to handle me and what just happened. They don't know if they can trust me to be there with them. And then I'd get frustrated and blame them for their pulling back because I'm here now. And then eventually we get to a point where we're okay. And then another conflict, and it would happen again. And the cycle, the merry-go-round, goes round and round. And there are other branches and versions of the pattern, but it essentially went like that. Now, I'm happy to report that that doesn't happen with Jenny and I anymore. It happened a little bit in the beginning, but we got some support and I figured out pretty quickly what I was doing and I changed it. But this is a very common pattern. And if you've been doing this for 5, 10, 20 years, it can be hard to break on both sides. So coming back to the trust piece, one thing I've worked really hard to do is to develop patience. And what is patience to me? Patience is slowing down, looking at the truth of my objective reality. Am I actually in danger here? Can I actually trust this person? Is this a big deal, a non-negotiable? Or are we just dealing with feelings? 99% of the time with Jenny, we're really just trying to make space for feelings. And I know that she has to do this with me too. For instance, I tend to be very punctual, and Jenny tends to be 3 to 5, maybe 10 minutes late. And to be honest with you, I still can't really understand why. If she knows that we're going to do something days in advance, is there any way that you can start to get ready a little bit earlier so that you're on time? And she's gotten a lot better at this, meaning she does it more my way sometimes, but it still happens. I've explained to her that her rushing around sometimes can bring up anxiety in me and that I really like to be on time, even early, but we still go through this. And the way I see it, I have two choices. One, I can double down on my story that being on time is always better, complain about her being late, and go through a more disconnected pattern. Poor me, you don't understand, her feeling guilty. I've done that, tried that. Or I can look at this experience as a way to grow my patience, my compassion, my empathy, my understanding, and see that there are ways that I struggle with things and the same ways that Jenny struggles to be on time. And I can tell you that the second one feels way better. My patience with Jenny has helped me grow my patience with myself. And that is something that I see a ton of men struggle with. They are so fucking impatient with themselves, so judgmental, so hard on themselves. And then it comes out onto other people, especially their partners. It just starts to feel gross. There's nothing worse than being frustrated about being frustrated and not knowing what to do about that. Spinning in your head, blaming them, then feeling bad about how you reacted. I really do not like doing that. So I chose to do my best to stop that pattern. And I'd say, and Jenny would probably agree, that I'm 90% better, which is night and day difference. I don't know if I'll ever get to 100%. Probably not, actually. I feel good with how that goes now. So my challenge to you would be to think about and even write down a list of all the little things that you could start to be more patient around or even let go of completely. This is a project to bring awareness to more of your life, to put attention on the things that really matter and less attention on the things that don't. It's easy to go on autopilot and to have your attention spread thin because you're overwhelmed with life. Even a few minutes of reflecting on how you behave in your relationship and in your life and where you lack patience and understanding and compassion can go a long way. And over time, if you continue to do this, you'll learn how to do it in all the little ways that really matter. Think about if you could just take 3 breaths anytime you get activated and you notice your heart racing. It doesn't take long. It's possible that you could snap out of it and save yourself hours or days of feeling disconnected. And over time, that will build more security and safety emotionally with your partner and yourself. to be able to trust yourself. Okay, so now let's talk about big T trust and some of the gray area there. Two of the biggest complaints that I hear from men are around money and parenting. Money, she's buying tons of stuff on Amazon. We're remodeling the house, or she wants to pay people to do stuff for us. And parenting, she's worried about how I talk to the kids, or I'm worried about how she talks to the kids. And these are big ones. I get it. And you know your situation better than me. So I can't assess it over here. But I can tell you this: men sometimes have a hard time recognizing the emotional value of purchases and getting help for life and home responsibilities. For instance, we have cleaners that come twice a month to our house. And at first, I didn't get this. We don't have kids, we don't have pets. We're both really clean individuals. I figured that we could clean up whenever we need to and save a few bucks. We're not rich, so why put the money to that? And what I've realized is how valuable that is to Jenny. She really values cleanliness, and having people come in and do this for us is immensely valuable to her time and attention. And it turns out it is for me too. I really don't like scrubbing toilets. And every minute that I'm not scrubbing a toilet, I can be focusing on our business and helping people, or relaxing, or playing pickleball. And so it turns out it really is worth it for us to put our resources towards the service. And I'm not saying there's a right or wrong here. I live in a community with a lot of young families, and I hear stories about stay-at-home moms who are parenting like 24/7 and doing all the cooking and cleaning, and they're overwhelmed. And the story I make up about it is that they've bought into this role that they have to do all these things to be a good mom, to be a good wife, and they miss out on a lot of opportunities to do things for themselves. And so they're tired and disconnected and overwhelmed, which really isn't good for the home or the family. It means that there will be less time and less resourcing available to connect with their partner. And if their husband's working a lot, grinding, bought into his own role, you can see how this can cause a problem. And this is one of the ways that slowly couples can turn into roommates. So I'm not saying that hiring a cleaner will fix your relationship, but it's worth bringing more awareness to where we put our time and attention. And if you're fairly secure financially, it might not be worth arguing about a few $100s a month or even a few thousand. Just look at the value that it gives the household and your partner and you, and weigh that against the cost of fighting and arguing about it. Now, I'm not saying that you don't need to talk about some of these decisions. I'm not saying roll over on every purchase or request that your partner has. Just be more mindful and get support if you need it. I find sometimes couples working with us will resolve one big issue in an hour if we're there to help support them. So that can be worth it too. And I get that you might be paying attention to your finances and forecasting for the future, but I notice sometimes men get so caught up in that they miss doing the same thing in their relationship. Forecasting, how will this impact our relationship long term? So just something to think about. Now, with children's physical and emotional safety, I get that this can be pretty nuanced. I'm not a parent myself, so I don't want to speak outside my depth. One thing I notice with parents is their children are like an extension of themselves. Sometimes they even care about their children's safety more than their own. So I'd recommend paying a lot of attention to your partner's concerns about the children. I do notice some men have a they'll be fine attitude about their kids, and their partner, their wife, can feel really lonely there. And this pattern can be entrenched over time, that the kids go to mom for emotional support because dad's not around, or he doesn't seem very available, or he just doesn't know how to do it, to ask the questions and to hold space. And I feel for guys because they have a different experience with the kids when they're very little, attachment wise. So it does take extra effort from men to lean into being an emotional support for your children. And it's one of those things where it's like, the more that you know about your kids and about parenting and about emotions, the more that you'll be able to help. It's not just about proximity and FaceTime. So it's worth learning how to do this. And this can be a deal breaker for some couples. If you don't feel like your partner can really support your children, that can be a reason to want to leave or to distance yourself from them and just co-parent. So this falls into the big T trust category. And the final thing I'll say about big T trust around the question, can I be myself around you? You want to look at this more as a dance and not just a one-way street. Can I be myself around you? The more that you can do this for your partner, the more they'll be able to do it for you. And if you want to take extreme responsibility, the move is to try to make space for all that your partner is, to understand them, and to stay curious about why they do what they do. Your story about them might be false. I can't tell you how many times I've been talking to a client and they're like, well, my wife is just this, or she just does this because of this. And I'm like, I don't know about that. Would she agree to that? Or did you just make that up and project it onto her? There are many, many things I've learned about Jenny that I did not know before. Sometimes I'm a slow learner. It takes me a bit of patience again to figure out what's really going on. Sometimes she doesn't even know. And we're like, yeah, I actually don't know why you do that. And neither do you, and vice versa. And that's okay. But it has been super helpful to understand things like anger can come from fear. I'm looking at an angry face, but there's actually fear underneath. And that's what I need to respond to. That's what needs attention. I don't have to run away because she feels angry. I can soften, let my guard down, be strong, and try to hold what she's bringing. She might be right. I might be in the wrong. That happens all the time. I've gotten really good at admitting when I'm wrong because I used to think I was always right, at least when it came to relational issues. So that's all I have to say about big T and little T trust. If you like what I have to say, please comment, subscribe, like. My homework for you is to write down all of your big T trust needs and little t trust needs, and then to assess what needs attention and what can you build more space around, be more patient with, or even let go of. And I'm here to help if you need help. I will include my website and Jenny's website in the description. See you next week.